Okay, so welcome everybody to today's discussion about DORA4 metrics design. And the reason that we're doing this sync is kind of to get everyone on the same page in terms of what we want in terms of the design. Historically, 3 or 4 different designers worked on this, and so there's kind of different kinds of designs all over the issues, and there's a little bit of confusion. So now that we've taken ownership of DORA4, I wanted to take this opportunity and have a sync meeting where we can discuss the design, which Ian will present. Sorry to put you on the spot, Ian. And kind of talk a little bit about the thinking and maybe raise some questions, and then kind of align all the issues throughout the epic so that there's a single source of truth. Yeah. So Ian, do you want to share the Figma file?
Yes. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. So I'm going to walk through a high level of what I understood in terms of putting this together. So if you see a mistake or read, definitely call it out so we can move forward from there. So the first thing I wanted to show you was DORA4 metrics for users that are in core. The idea is that we're going to introduce the DORA4 metrics kind of tile at the top of the CI/CD analytics page. And this just gives one high-level piece of data for each of the DORA4 metrics, which is kind of convenient because there are 4 of them. And that's all it does. And this is only at the project level. And then the rest of these charts for CI/CD should already be there and should be the standard that we're working off of.
Wait, don't continue to the core. I just wanted to take a step back and remind everyone that at the moment we put everything in Ultimate, and that's intentional. The idea is that once we finish the MVC and get everything into Ultimate, which is, you know, the project level and the group level analytics, we also open an option for core users to have some kind of DORA4 capabilities, what they can use. So just to talk about the persona and who's interested in DORA4 metrics, there's really 2 that we noted in the issue. Maybe there's more, but there's 2 that we kind of are focusing our efforts. One of them is for the executive team, which is interested in like how the company is doing or how different groups are doing, and they're really interested in seeing performance of different groups around DevOps and their entire SDLC lifecycle. And the other one is the specific team that are interested in their own, you know, results and what they're doing in terms of all these different metrics, and they want to see a constant improvement between their sprints or over time. And so they're really 2 different kinds of things that they're interested in. So that's it. So everything is in Ultimate now, but we do plan to have it in every tier.
One question about this is it going to be in every tier for both project and group? So like you mentioned that those top 4 metrics are available at the project level. Will they also be available in core at the group level?
No.
Okay.
I think also, well, you need to remind me, Nathan, because you're working on that similar issue on the group level on the group level release analytics. Did we put that in core?
I actually don't know where it is. That's a good question. It's premium, I think.
Okay.
Is what the issue says at the moment.
So I think as a general notion, core usually doesn't get in a group anything because the way that we tiered it, that it's for IC, the way that we give core features. So I think that in any case, any group level, anything shouldn't be available at core.
Sounds good.
Okay, should I move on to the premium dashboard that we talked about? Cool. So the next one is available at premium. This is a project level analytics CI/CD. We still have that DORA4 at the top, just like we did for core users. The difference here is that we are now introducing this DORA4 tab, which will contain all the DORA4 metrics. So the CI/CD analytics, that stays the same as what it is now, but for premium, they'll get a new dashboard. And the idea here is that for each of the DORA4 metrics, we will show a full chart. So it's going to be that metric over time, starting with kind of hard coding 30, 90, and 180 days, I believe. And then being able, as a post MVC idea, to be able to let the user define that kind of timeline a little more effectively. So we'll see a chart for deployment frequency. We'll see one for lead time to change, time to restore service, and change failure rate. Right now, these metrics are all going to be based off of production. And that is a hard coded, it is going to be quote production. I'm not sure what it actually is. I think we have an issue right now to make it something more flexible. And then the long-term goal is going to be letting users select what environment the metrics are going to be displayed at. Is that correct, Arit? And do you have anything else you wanted to add for the project level premium user DORA4?
Absolutely. So we're making it a little bit more flexible now, but we want to make it, and Nathan is very active in that issue. We want to make the multiple selection, or I don't know, somehow for users to be able to select whatever environments they want, because even internally in GitLab, we don't use production. So at least for dogfooding, I would like to start with something. So yes, we're doing it iteratively, the GitLab style, but yes. So at the end of the day, the user will be able to customize the timestamp, like whatever time they want, and the environment. Some additional data for not the MVC, but a little bit after the MVC, like vision that I would like to just say. And Ian and I discussed, like, it's really hard to just put it in this design. So I'm just going to mention it. And for anyone watching this video later, so we know. One thing is that I would also like us to have on these charts like different annotations of what is going on. So like, for example, this is the day that we created a release, or this is the day that we closed a release, or maybe even going into deploy freezes, flags going on and off. Like, I want to know what's going on in my system in order to understand these metrics more, because charts are great, but you really need a lot of background information to know like what's going on there. So annotations is something really nice that we will add, not as part of the MVC. And also historical data. So right now you can see that the longest time is 180 days, but maybe you have like more metrics in the system and you're really interested. So some form of exporting historical data to CSV or something similar to what testing is doing in Verify. They have a way to download test results or something of the sort. Sorry about that.
When you say you're downloading test results, sorry, random question. Are they the results for each one of the DORA4 metrics, or are you hoping for a user to be able to download the DORA4 report and get all of the metrics in whatever file?
That's a good question. The way that I was thinking about it was allowing downloading each one of these individually, but we can also think of doing a full report. That's a good question. I'm not sure.
So Rita, I have a question. So all of these deployments is referred to any deployment, because we have, for example, deployment to Kubernetes, deployment to AWS. It's a summary of all of the different deployments. It supports everything.
Yes, it takes, if you're deploying through GitLab. If you're not deploying through GitLab, you're not getting these metrics, but we're taking the internal data that we have. We added an API in the previous milestone that allows you to fetch this data. And what Nathan is doing is actually presenting that data into the UI. So you can get this data both on UI and both on API. You can import it into an external system. But if you're doing CD, with AWS code deploy or with Spinnaker or something else, you're not going to be able to see these metrics. Each metric is defined a little bit different. So for example, lead time for changes, we define this as how long it takes for a merge request to get merged into production. So again, if you're not using CI, you're just using source control, not going to help you. Time to restore service. It also depends if you have deployments through GitLab, and change failure rate, we defined it by how long it takes to close incidents. So if you're not using GitLab incidents at the moment, you really can't benefit from it. I'm sure we're going to need to add additional integrations at when we proceed, but it's not part of the MVC at the moment.
Okay.
Also similar question on this one. Is this still only, excuse me, still only project level, or do we add in a group level at this point in time?
Only project level. Premium gets only project level.
Okay, so a group is the only, or Ultimate's the only one that gets a group level screen. Cool.
Let me refine, let's just be a little bit more precise. For DORA4, project level analytics for DORA4 or to the premium user, they're not going to be able to see group level DORA4 metrics. CI/CD metrics, on the other hand, or release, they probably can. So just DORA4 for Ultimate is going to be group level. The idea at the end is that since the majority of our users are self-managed, they're actually going to want instance level. I didn't define it as part of the MVC, but it's probably going to be, the next ask. I kind of thought of the fact that if you create a group of all your projects, that can kind of be an instance level, but I don't think that's going to fly. So.
Okay. The only thing I had from the design perspective to show was exactly what Nathan just brought up. We only for the ultimate tier should there be these group level analytics. The analytics look the same in the design, but they'll be at the group level. For the MVC, I'd like it to look very similar. I would imagine, and Arit, correct me if I'm wrong, as a post MVC, we might want to look at the way that groups are managed in the dashboard. So if you want to compare different groups together or different projects inside of that group, there might be some more expansion for that ultimate tier, as well as being able to expand into the instance level metrics, which would have a lot of the same mechanics, but instead of being for projects, it would be for groups, etc.
Yeah, what I do want to mention here on the ultimate dashboard is that we are now seeing a group of projects. So again, it doesn't have to be part of the MVC, but I do want to kind of explain the broad vision. In a similar way that we could select the timestamp and the environment, I would also like the user to have a way to select the projects that they want to display. Maybe there's some like really uninteresting projects that have no meaning and they just want to hide it, or maybe the ones that they're super interested in. Another thing that I kind of want to discuss is that there's really two ways to look at group level metrics. One of them, and that's what we kind of wanted in the MVC, was show an aggregation. So when I'm talking about deployment frequency, it aggregates all the data from all the different projects and shows me a chart based on the aggregation, right? But maybe we would also want to see side by side or line graphs where the series would be a project or an environment or a group, or a different ways, but you would want to see like the deployment frequency one as a comparison view and not only like an aggregation view, because as I mentioned, if we're talking about the executive persona that we were interested in giving them this capability, they're really interested in seeing how their groups are performing. And Nathan, if you remember when way back when we had an initial discussion on DORA4, we kind of talked about gamification in DORA4. So just for the others that weren't in that conversation, I just want to take a step back and kind of explain what we were thinking about. So if you think about DORA4 in the instance level, or even nicer in GitLab.com, we have a ton of data that others don't. So we have a bunch of different projects from different companies, and we have all this aggregation data. It would be really, really cool if we could show a comparison of how your company is doing versus others similar to you, and similar to you is TBD. So similar to you could be it's using the same programming language, it has the same number of seats, it's in the same field. I don't know, we can define that in different ways. but actually see how you're performing versus other companies would be really, really interesting, because you want to know that you're a high performer. It kind of gives you some of that competition, juice, competitive, flow. And so we were even thinking of doing badges, and Nathan, I think, even designed badges for that to kind of show you you're awesome or you need to improve. And we were thinking of doing like something similar also for group level. So if you're really interested in a group of developers or several software agile teams, and you kind of want to do some kind of, competition between them, you can show how amazing your team is versus others. And it could be really, really cool, but definitely not part of the NBC, just, part of my wild dreams.
So one more question about this, again, kind of relating to the different tiers. So if you're a premium customer at the project level and then you upgrade to Ultimate, is there any difference in the project level page, or would those be identical? The only change in Ultimate is that we're adding it to the group.
Only changes that we're adding it to the group.
Perfect. Awesome. And then the other question I had, in that CI/CD analytics tab on the group level, is that where the stuff that those two data points that I'm working on now will go, which is the number of releases and the percentage of releases, of projects with releases?
So again, we're doing it with iterations. So we kind of had a few conversations about the naming of the tab, if you remember. And so we were going back and forth. Should we call it deployment? Should we call it DORA4? Should we call it? So here's the thing. At the moment, for what we're doing now, we added 3 different charts per metric for each time step. And we need to, so we have several approaches that we can do this in terms of iteration. One is the naive way that we've been doing it now, which is we just add a tab for each metric, and then each tab has 3 charts. Putting all metrics in one tab and having 12 charts, I think is a bad user experience. So we can do 2 things: either consolidate the view that we have today from 3 to 1, having this, easy way to navigate between the charts, because basically we're showing the same chart, but just for different time steps. There's no difference in the charts that we're displaying today. And then just renaming the tab and adding the metrics one by one. So whatever you prefer, at some point we're going to need to do it. So whatever is easier for you, if it's adding a tab and then consolidating, we're going to need to do this work eventually. So I'm going to ask you that question. What do you think is the best way?
I personally really like the look of these mockups right here. So that, yeah, I don't know what the correct path is toward that, but that makes a lot of sense to me. And this gives us a lot of flexibility. Like we could eventually replace that 3090, 180 button group with like a custom date range, which is nice. Like if we wanted to do that, or we can filter all of them by the same environment. So I think this structure gives us a lot of flexibility going forward.
Also thinking about Ultimate as wanting to be able to compare and contrast later, or be able to dive into specific metrics for specific problems. If we condense them all into the DORA4 tab now, when we're done with the MVC, then we can start using the tabs to show really fine detailed data or those comparisons and stuff like that. It gives us more flexibility moving forward.
Awesome. So if we're all good with this, we'll add this. I'll create a new issue to consolidate the charts. We'll add it to the needs weight as always, and then plan for the iteration, for the implementation of it. Okay. And then we can move forward on that. There is one more thing that I want to mention, and that is the value stream analytics. So the analytics team, which are now called something else, Optimize, have already created some sort of DORA4 metrics in a tile view. And we're not showing the same data. So I've had conversations with them that we should probably align to show the same data. they count it a little bit different than we do. So I expect that we're going to start collaborating closer to them. And we kind of need to share the knowledge between the two teams. We're not showing exactly the same things because they're staying at Tile View, which is similar to what we're doing in core. But I wouldn't want us to show different values in value stream analytics and in the CI/CD analytics. So since they don't have an API, I think it's more flexible to use our solution, which is how we started out. We were thinking about stealing their data, but there's a lot of limitations. One is that there wasn't an API that we could have used. And the other one is that it's locked to production, similar to how we started, but we quickly decided to expand the API at the least, and then maybe even allow selection of any environment that you want. So we're going to have to, consolidate those two so that we're showing a single source of truth, and people are not like, oh, wait, on this value, on this DORA4, I have deployment frequency 50, and here I have 75. Which one is right? So, so I expect that work to also be in addition to what we're doing now.
All right, I have a comment, a question about the namings of the tabs. So the left tab is CI/CD Analytics, and the right tab is DORA4, but DORA4 is not part of CI/CD Analytics. It's kind of analytics for CI/CD, right? And it looks like a different thing. There is CI/CD Analytics, and so maybe something with the naming has to be adjusted.
You know what? That's a good point. Maybe we should call the tab pipeline, because the CI/CD analytics kind of is the title of what we're going to see. And at the end of the day, what we're actually seeing is pipeline statistics and then DORA4, right?
Right.
So maybe we
Because
could,
both of them are both of them are CI/CD Analytics.
yeah. What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I thought the same thing, is that we're on the CI/CD analytics page. Like, it's not really a subcategory of that page. Like, we should probably be more specific with what's in that tab.
So should we just rename the tab to pipeline?
That would make sense to me, I think. Assuming so that what's in that tab is the pipeline charts that we see today.
Yeah.
That's what's in there.
And then we're also adding the release ones that you're working on, right?
Yeah, will that go in that tab, or would that be like a separate tab?
I think it would be a separate tab because pipelines has nothing to do with releases.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes sense to me.
Well, we have Hayata here. She designed the release one, so maybe she can answer to that.
Only if you repeat the question.
So Hayana, Nathan is working on an issue unrelated to DORA4. It's about release metrics that we wanted to present on the, I think it was on the group level, right, Nathan?
Yep.
So kind of like, I think it had to do with like release statistics, how many releases were created or something of the sort. Does it make sense that we add it here under CI/CD analytics on a separate tab?
No, Hyann, it's a different one. I'm just responding to her chat message. It's the group level statistics. It's how many releases there are in the group, and then the percentage of projects with releases.
Oh,
So
yeah,
like, yeah.
I remember that one. So you wouldn't add that on the release overview, would leave here instead. Yeah. I think it would be interesting, well, if the scope didn't change, right, for the release page, I think it would be interesting to then have, I don't know, a shortcut or somewhere in the release page where you can link the users here, if that's the case, so that the flow doesn't change that much. But indeed, if you're showing the metrics for pipelines, for release, etc., in my head, it makes sense to have everything concentrated on analytics CI/CD.
Ian, can you open the link that I sent you in the chat so that we're all looking at the same thing?
Yeah, that's the mock-up I'm working off of.
Yeah, the one with just with the cards, right, and nothing else.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's on a different screen for you, Ian. I can't see it at the moment in the share. Anyway, I can see your cursor in the other one. Which is where- yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, so that's what I'm working on this milestone. So I just want to make sure that this, basically the work I'm doing here isn't wasted. Like we have a place for it or a vision for it in our page. So I think that if we add like a releases tab, like we showed on the other one, that would make sense to me.
Yeah, I see what you mean now. Yeah. Makes sense to me as well, because if you want to later on just, add more information, more analytics related to releases specifically, you already have a place. And if not, it's just a tab. You can get rid of it easily.
I think we could probably come up with a bunch of really interesting release metrics, like how many issues are an average in the release, how many MRs, the duration of a release. I think we could come up with really interesting metrics along the way. Though it's out of scope from our DORA4 discussion, but just.
But audit, this is also interesting from like a release page perspective, right? We had this multiple conversations in the past about where do we fit all the data that we want to show related to releases. Then it could be here, right? In your release page, you have the overview, you have the release notes, etc. And then you link to the analytics and with this detailed view of the stats of all your releases. So food for thought.
Cool. So I think we're aligned. There's quite a lot of homework to align all the different issues. I don't know, Jack and I went on an opening issue frenzy, I guess, and we opened a bunch of issues with a ton of design. So here's what I'll commit to. At some point, I'll have everything updated, but I'll make sure that everything before the milestone will be updated and talks to the right design. That's okay.
If you could send me that epic that we're working off of, I can also add the designs here with the notes that we put together. So there is just one place that is like, this is our overall vision. And then if there is a discrepancy between an individual issue, we can always reference back to, this is where we last decided we're all going. So that might also make it a little bit easier for you.
Yeah, the epic, I sent it in the chat. I'm also gonna add this recording. I think it's going to be beneficial for not only our group, for others that want to understand where we're going with DORA4 and also the optimized group. So thank you all for such a productive session.
Thanks so much. That was really good. I feel a lot better about the path forward.
Awesome.
Me too.
Thank you.
Great. Have a nice day, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.